Sam Chauhan, Dr. Raj Singh, Professor Nathawat, and my friend Heinrich. Friends, my association with Amity is almost 2 decades, and Dr. Ashok Chauhan, the founder, he has been very kind and nice to me. More intimately, Professor Veera Raghavan, when she was the director, she was quite responsible to bring me more intimately with the Amity. I know Professor Nathawat again for more than 4 decades, so it is not a new acquaintance. And when he asked me that they are organizing a conference on positive psychology, and I suggested whether we could talk on the spirituality and mental health, he was more than happy. And I just thought of sharing the topic on spirituality and mental health with this august audience. You know, my primary objective of the talk is to first to clarify the concept of spirituality, which is very important, and to understand it in the context of religion. The secondary objective is to examine and suggest its relationship to the mental health. As a part of this objective, I will try to make a framework which will be developed, since a framework is something which is considerably less than a model. As it is understood in science and philosophy, a model theorizes or theoretical constructs actualizing ideas or concepts. Now when we see the concept of spirituality, we begin with from the historical perspective. The Western philosophers, mainly the Greeks in the West, to them mind was not material, but it was spiritual, and it was liable perhaps to survival after death. So what we call in India that Atma which survives, the body is just like we are the like temporary abode. The body is not a permanent abode. At the time of Plato and Socrates and Hippocrates, new elements to these concepts were added to end to the concept of the mind. These concepts, first was the idea of purposiveness, very important, or the intent. That is the idea that the mind guides human behavior. The second was the moral principle that the mind guides behavior for good ends, and that evil ones and that retribution according to Plato would follow if it was not successful. The third and the most important contribution of these philosophers was that mind has the quality of self-awareness, that is conscious of self, which distinguishes man from the animals. It was Plato who made this idea more explicit, who said man is not only conscious, but man is conscious of his consciousness. Now this is the crux of the whole thing. He also elaborated on the idea that mind has a purpose or intent, which was very advanced thinking at that stage. The third, that consciousness is the very window through which we perceive reality. These are the very highly developed concepts which developed at that time. While there are other philosophers who believe in a spirituality claim that spirituality is concerned with the soul and it is directed for the pursuit of personal meaning. What is the purpose of life? We ask why we live. These questions are eternal questions. Now when we try to examine this kind of, for Plato and Hippocrates, the brain was the seat of interaction between body and mind. The ancient philosophers, including Indians, also believed in hierarchy of soul and mind. The uppermost layer being purposive, consciously aware, the next layer being the level of feeling and the energy, and the last being the bodily senses like appetite. So when we see this concept of spiritualism, we can see from different aspects, but from materialistic biologism, those who believe in this, they all regard all forms of human thought and action as random products of brain activity, thus blinding out the mind altogether. Thus consciousness and thought, according to them, are entirely physical products of our brain and are created by the electrical and chemical charges in the neurons in our brain. Now this is the materialistic biological believers. In spite of our present day in-depth knowledge and understanding of the brain, we still are largely ignorant of many aspects of the human mind. We do not yet know which process in the brain produces consciousness, or how exactly the earlier described both by Eastern and Western philosophers. So the mind-brain relationship, the present day scientific belief is that all life, including human life, is merely a product of the blind forces of the nature. In this materialistic view, our minds, our souls, our spirit, free will are simply an illusion which are created by the electrical and chemical changes in the neurons of the brain. However, there is intimate relationship between the spirituality and mental health. Science gets us physical comfort. Spirituality brings us mental peace and raises our consciousness. Now, when we try to see the spirituality can be experienced from two different aspects, what we call as secular, or the second is the religious, which is based on rituals. The secular emphasizes on values and science. Now, when we see the secular viewpoint of the spiritualism, the neuroscientists believe that given computers of sufficient power and sophistication, it would be possible to predict the course of any human being's life and actions moment by moment. That means what we are going to do after 1 year or 2 years or 3 years, it should be possible. So there are some of the neurochemists who believe in this kind of a viewpoint, but then this raises a serious question. Since consciousness and thought are entirely physical products of our brain and nervous system, and they suggest that spirituality is based on values. In other words, neuroscientists have not discovered that there is no you in you. They start their work with the assumption anything they find is interpreted on the basis of that view. According to some of the secular viewpoint or the scientists, nature is, as Oxford, one of the zoologists, Richard Dawkins, who has written intensively on this subject, put it as a blind watchmaker, while one of the American philosophers, Daniel Dennett, who is a renowned philosopher of mind, and he believes strongly that computers can simulate human mental processes, as he tries to convince with his arguments that there is not really any such thing as mind in the traditional sense. He is best known perhaps for saying that Darwin's dangerous idea on the origin and nature of the species is the best idea anyone ever had, because it firmly grounded in the life in materialism. During the last 1 decade or so, there is some kind of a revivalism about the Darwin concept, which is very interesting. The Dennett further argues that there is no soul or there is no spirit associated with the human brain or any supernatural element or life after death. Naturally, the question addressed by Dennett and similar other scientists is not whether materialism is good news or bad news, Rather, the question is, does that evidence from neuroscience support it? According to the naturalistic viewpoint of scientists, consciousness and thought are entirely physical products of our brain and nervous system, and since our brain is fully printed at birth, what makes us think that man have free will? Where is it going to come from? What mind, what self, what soul are the certain questions, what anything that you will not be immediately grabbed by those scornful quotations marks is going to bubble up your brain stem to giving it yourself. Now there is in the last 1 decade some interesting concept has developed, what we call, is there a God spot in the brain? Interestingly, this study, one of the Indian scientists, Dr. Ramchandran, and his colleagues, the director of the Center of the Brain at the University of California at San Diego, raised the question of suggesting that his study had discovered a God spot in the human brain that could underpin an evolutionary instinct to believe in religion. Popular media, the scientific community, and academia have been attracted greatly to this idea that religious beliefs was something hardwired into the human brain in such a module. Now this has gained, not only the media and the academia, but other persons. One of his colleagues, of course in University of California at Los Angeles, Persinger, finds simply indicate that the temporal lobes and the limbic systems are involved in spirituality and mystic experiences. They do not mean that these areas create the experience all by themselves, but according to them, the spiritual brain demonstrates the role of a number of other regions in the brain which are concerned with the spiritual brain. Brain scans taken from PET or positron emission tomography show that these neural areas light up whenever research subjects are exposed to discussions of spiritual and religious topics, suggesting that there is something linked with the God or the religion. The so-called God spot does not prove the existence of God, but it does show that the brain is sensitive to wider meaning and value of faith, and that is a very interesting development. Now there is few other behavioral geneticists like Dean Hammer and some of his colleagues assume that humans are animals who have some kind of an organ, gene or programmed instinct for spirituality. Now geneticist Hammer thinks that he has found a gene or genes that code for spirituality. Like our president just said that can we have certain genes about positive psychology and we can control many of these negative thoughts. Another group of medical geneticists do not support this view and carry contradictory views of their own. According to geneticists like Dean, religion is so widespread that it must be genetically inherited instinct. Because it is so widespread, so it is a gene-prone behavior. If there is a behavior that has been universally exhibited among every human being, that behavior must be represent an inherent characteristics of that species. Now that is a kind of a explanation regarding the role of genes in the. But is there a God gene or God spot in the brain? The question is important. We may examine many proposed explanations and show that why they are inadequate to explain this particular thing. Philosophers of science, the American, like the Karl Popper, who died recently, a great thinker, he has called this line of thinking in his own words very interesting, what he calls as promissory materialism. In other words, if we adopt it, we are accepting a promissory note on the future of materialism. promissory materialism has been immensely influential in the science, because any doubt about materialism, no matter what the state of the evidence, can be leveled as unscientific in the principle. In this respect, a more balanced view is given by Sir John Eccles, a neurophysiologist, a neurologist, and a Nobel Prize winner, in these words. Actually, Popper and John Eccles both have examined from philosophical and the neurochemist point of view about the functioning of the brain, as well as material beings with bodies and brains existing in the material world. According to Eccles, materialistic neuroscientists and some philosophers hold that mind, consciousness, and self are byproducts of the brain's electrical and chemical processes, and that spiritual experiences are nothing but brain states of delusions created by neural activity. According to these scientists, who believe that there is no spiritual source for mystical experience, that is, they think that the human brain creates these experiences and in so doing creates God. So some scholars, like American philosopher like Valiant, believes that spirituality is all about positive emotions. You are talking about positive psychology and positive emotions, and they feel, as a part of the positive psychology, that the emotions, which include love, hope, joy, forgiveness, compassion, truth, gratitude, and awe, they are all elements of the positive psychology. They epitomize what Charles Darwin long ago called social emotions. They help us to break out the ego cage of I and mine, and that is the another way of looking at it. Now there is a new scientific frame of reference which is emerging. A scientific frame of reference must address the evidence for that. Such a framework would greatly stimulate the scientific investigation of the neural, physiological, psychological, social conditions favoring the occurrence of the mystic experience, as well as the effects of such spiritual practices on health and psychological and social functioning. There is a newer trend in human evolution towards spiritualization of consciousness. Early 80s, the WHO, when they wanted to have the health, the fourth component, the debate is going on, and still it is going on. They have not been able to come to some kind of a unanimous conclusion, though there are some the health workers and theologians who are trying to bring out some kind of a what we call a consensus statement, but they have their own viewpoint. They propose a new scientific frame of reference may accelerate our understanding of this process of spiritualization and significantly contribute to the emergence of a planetary type of consciousness. So spirituality has many meanings. While spirituality is both the source and the outgrowth of faith for many people. For others, spirituality can be equated with the occult and with bogus faith healers, often bringing into mind reincarnation, telepathy, and angels and others. To others less burdened with the belief system, spirituality can appear as nothing more than a covert narcissism and a new age mandate to follow your wish. Sigmund Freud, though he has not written much, but he has mentioned somewhere, he says religion is an illusion that operated outside the empirical observation, even as a mass delusion. Sigmund Freud considered spirituality relative to people's psychological makeup. This was based on instinctually grounded infantile drives that were biologically based. A person, according to him, had to overcome these drives with the contemporary acquired during the maturation and with the acquisition of civilizing values of a culture that govern our behavior. Jung, on the other hand, posited a collective unconscious that could mature into a constructive spiritual orientation. So what is the meaning of spirituality? it's still we are trying to evolve. Spirituality is concerned with the soul. And it is directed toward the pursuit of personal meaning. What is the purpose of life? Leading a spiritual life, a person develops his power of concentration through selfless action, gains, and is able to discriminate between the spirit and matter, the real and unreal, to discover the truth. Soon a spiritual person comes to realize that the self in him is the self in all. Thus, experiencing Godhood, such a concept has been supported by many scholars who believe in spirituality. So those who believe that spirituality is something which is eternal, it is not local, it has no boundaries, it has no barriers, unlike religion. Spirituality is that aspect of life which gives people meaning and purpose of life. It can be achieved through participation in religion, belief in God, family, naturalism, humanism. But most important is the clarity of the intention creates stability of the mind. Many philosophers who believe in spirituality claim that recognition of the truth is the discovery of the true consciousness. And that one place where both scientists and philosophers meet, because scientists, the purpose of science is to discover the truth, and the philosophers also try to find out the truth. And at that level, at that plane, both merge. Being haunted by the truth is being haunted by your own true conscience. The point of these experiences is for you to realize what your part in the big drama of life is. Most people are so concerned only with themselves that they do not feel any responsibility for those around. The more deeply a person has realized self, the deeper will be the realization of the kind of the conscience. The true value of the profound spiritual experience lies in the discovery of the fundamental truth, and the full realization is in the evolutionary leap to which all spiritual experiences ultimately lead. Though deep spiritual experiences, a human being realizes a profound truth, hence liberating himself from tendencies towards aggression and illusion is a part of that approach. The crux of any spiritual experience is to bring a human being to the point where he is able to harmoniously live with other human beings. Now that is very important. Indian philosophy has always realized the value of the introspection and the value of concentration and looked upon it as that means of perception of the truth. It recognized the close connection of mind and the body. The yoga system of philosophy by Patanjali, it deals specifically with these experiences. The yoga helps reach higher level of consciousness through a transformation of the psychic organism which enables it to get beyond the limits of ordinary human experience. Consciousness is the very window through which we perceive the reality. So what we can learn from the hard science? From a scientific perspective, quantum physics has theories for us to accept mind and matter as two irreducible but inseparable aspects of aspects of the quantum particles. Interestingly, in 2004, the Nobel Prize in Physics was given in the world of the Nobel Committee for contribution toward what we call the theory of everything. This theory aims to show that considering all the fundamental particles and fields that make up, at least physical, that make up the universe, you are nothing but different aspects of one single source. In 2006, again, the Nobel Prize in Physics is for the discoveries in cosmology that allows us to glimpse the universe closely to its very inception. The preponderance of evidence uncovered by cosmology point to a mind-boggling fact. This vast universe originated from a space much smaller than a speck of dust. In fact, from such a small space, that we are as large compared to it as the universe is large to us. You know that now this is very brings to the Indian philosophy, and that so though the certain vocabularies and words are different, it suggests that the universe is indeed came from a source. Body and mind are inseparable, both are interlocked. A balance of the two is a necessary condition for a healthy and meaningful life. So, what is the conflict? The science gets us physical comforts. Spirituality brings us mental peace and raises our consciousness. Positive values, attitudes, beliefs and strength acquired through spiritual practices contributes to the sense of bliss. But spirituality is not just about following your bliss. Spirituality has a deep psychological basis and a reality that needs to be understood. The pleasure we derive is through our senses and is basically physical, while happiness, which is a positive emotion, is a psychological, but bliss, which is higher than pleasure and higher than happiness, is a spiritual. So actually that we are trying to divide the pleasure, the happiness and the bliss. This hierarchy of positive emotions will help us to clarify the concept of spirituality. So if you see that what are the hierarchy of happiness, I would just say that at three levels: the pleasure which we derive through our sensory modalities, which are physical; the happiness is a psychological, which is at the mind, but the bliss is much higher than the happiness. Body and mind are inseparable, as we know, both are interlocked. Balance of the two is a necessary condition of the healthy, meaningful life. Science gets us physical comforts, as I said, but spirituality brings us mental calm. Professor Nathavas was talking, and probably, Dalai Lama, he has given some thought, and one of this that, in the words of Dalai Lama, he said one of the lectures that science gets us physical comforts, but spirituality brings us mental calm. Positive values, attitudes, beliefs and sense strength that one acquires through spiritual practices contributes to the sense of bliss. Happiness is our timeless goal. As I said that though it is but spirituality is eternal. It is not fixed in time. It is not fixed in the place. Since we have a notion that anything pleasant or pleasurable to the senses would lead to happiness, our mind craves for such experiences. How there are some shortcomings in seeking happiness this way. First, senses always require some external object in order to convey an experience. If I like the happiness gives me in eating something or a good music or anything, that means I need external object and I need a sensory modality. This spells dependence. Secondly, experience of sense gratification is only temporary, while what we really are looking for is the lasting state which comes in a spiritual state. Thirdly, if an experience is pleasurable, this sense demand more of the same experience, leading us to a constant state of wanting. Just like persons who take some drugs and they get that kind of happiness, but it's a very temporary and it's a negative thing, or any other. So this sense for lasting happiness, its source has to be free from five senses. First, find a force in this hierarchy which is superior to the mind. Many of the mystics and other great philosophers have given a lot of thought about this also, about the bliss. And they say that there are three well-known epistemological theories, namely idealism, realism and pragmatism. They stress in coherence, they second correspondence or independence, and third satisfaction. On the one side, satisfaction leans toward the pleasure of the hedonistic, and on the other toward the beatification of mystics. It is said by a great philosopher that it is much better to be a Socrates dissatisfied than a fool satisfied. We might extend this argument and say it is much better to be a mystic dissatisfied than a Socrates satisfied. So this satisfaction of the mystic is what is called beatification, bliss, or ecstasy. Beatification has got a philosophy of its own. Beatification might be looked at from 6 points of view: from metaphysical, epistemological point of view, from the psychological, mystical, and from the ethical and axiological point of view. It's a beatification that constitutes the ultimate end, and it is this that has been aimed at by all the mystics of the world who have tried to find the spiritual experience. But it depends upon understanding. Now, understanding has a meaning. You know, there are different levels of understanding. I say that, like, the one is that you go through the computer and get all the internet, latest information from the Google or any other thing, but that information does not give you knowledge. So knowledge is higher than the information, but the wisdom is much higher. You know, if you see all even the great discoveries of the scientists, you would find that almost 20% of the scientists who got the Nobel Prize and other things, they were not scientists. Many of the greatest discoveries were by the other people who observed. They never worked in great universities, but they were able to do this because they had the wisdom. So the information, knowledge, and wisdom, they are different hierarchy. According to the Buddha, understanding has 2 layers, you know, which is again derived from Indian, Anubhuti and Pativeda. Anubhuti is what we call knowledge. It is nothing but accumulated memory and understanding of a particular subject on the basis of data and observation. So it is not what we are trying to interpret today, but it was there. It is therefore superficial. Real understanding comes from Pativeda, or deep penetration into the core of the subject. And there the wisdom or it comes. The distinction represents the opposite concept of rationality or reason on the one hand and spirituality on the other hand. It enables us to understand an object in its true nature and color. In it, all the exterior labels like name, fame, money, and power have zero value in our life. This kind of understanding can be developed only through rigid training of mind and through meditation. A person on reaching this stage of penetrative wisdom can see everything in the right perspective. He acquires the capability to make a distinction between what is desirable, what is correct, what is undesirable, what is incorrect. Such a person also develops the ability to acquire habits that enables his mind to see and believe nothing but good of all. One has to strive to be first of all free from all kinds of impurities that tend to derail us from the right path. So the spirituality, that aspect of life which gives people meaning and purpose in life. One of the Western philosophers from Finland, it can be achieved through participation in religion, belief in God, one way, but that is not, but it creates a confusion. Now often people confuse with religion. They say that religion and spirituality are not the same. It has been realized now that there is a difference between spirituality and religion. Spirituality does not exclude other philosophies of life, religion. Religion is associated with formal organizations. Religion indicates an organized way to relate to the divine, focuses on controls and morals, while spirituality does not depend on institutional affiliation. Yes, it does not have barriers that this institution or that religion or that God or that prophet. In religion they will cosmic salvation, but spirituality operates in private. It is intrinsic and is chosen through in private. Spirituality is a personal way of relating to the divine self, people and the world. While in religion may sometimes act as a driving force, religion is accessible at church, mosque, gurudwara or a temple. But for spirituality you don't require any of these institutions. Religious institutions are usually concerned with doubt. Spirituality offers autonomy from institutions and provides an open ground to explore. In religion, people have difficulty in interaction. My way is right, his way is wrong. In spiritual, people have a common communication flow. Craving for ego, power, control, prestige, arrogant, authoritarianism may act as underlying currents of the religion. While in case of spirituality lies in the kind of religion about which Swami Vivekananda says religion is not in doctrines, in dogmas, nor in intellectual argumentation. It is being and becoming. The words might vary in terms of individual time, place and socio-economics, yet in acceptance is the same in terms of of the people. While the core of spiritual philosophies dwells on the understanding and the purpose and the meaning of life. You know, the purpose and meaning of life again and again comes in different forms. So understanding at the root of the development that leads one to ultimate deliverance or nirvana. So the God spot in the human brain is built in a spiritual center and located among the neural connections in the temporal lobes. Scans taken from positron emission tomography, these neural areas light up whenever these topics are discussed. The God spot does not prove the existence of God, but it does show that the brain is sensitive to wider meaning and value. But meditation seems to be the way for a bigger brain. Certain regions of the brain of those meditating for a long period were larger than in the smaller groups. You know, it has been shown even recently by the psychotherapists that when you give a very cognitive psychotherapy, some parts of the brain enlarge. So these are which can be demonstrated by PET scan and other things. Specifically, such people showed significantly larger volumes of the hippocampus areas within the orbitofrontal cortex, the thalamus and the inferior temporal gyrus regions known as regulating emotions. People who consistently meditate have a singular ability to cultivate positive emotions, retain emotional stability and engage in mindful behavior. People who meditate said that deep concentration was an essential part of their practice and most meditate between 10 to 90 minutes daily. Now when we try to see about the God and the, like this part I say, the God, the faith, if you have a God, you believe that thing, whether it's a psychotherapist or it's anything, you go to temple or you go to some. So it is your faith which gives you belief and it is your belief which gives you relief. So this is a very simple but very powerful way. So the God and faith go together and God and faith gives you belief and belief gives you the relief. So most of us have some taste of experience where sometimes this time stood still. One forgot oneself and one was carried away by the moment. Is a spiritual experience the same, more intense, powerful enough to have the potential to transform one permanently over? So I said the spiritual experience is eternal, permanent. It is not bound by time and place. The transformation is permanent and there is no going back. Yoga can help between the mind and the body through the. I would I'll not say how you can reach. There are different stages. So it is a spiritual life. A person develops his power of concentration through selfless action, gains discrimination between the spirit and the matter, the real and the unreal, and soon he comes to realize the self in him is the self in all and gets experience of the Godhood. Thank you very much.